The ocean has a way of looking like glass right before a storm hits. That's how my life felt on the morning of my 35th wedding anniversary. I woke up to the sound of seagulls outside our beach house in Cape May, thinking I was about to embark on the trip of a lifetime, a luxury Mediterranean cruise that my husband, Arthur, and my daughter, Madison, had been planning for months. I had my suitcase packed, my passport ready, and a heart full of excitement. I didn't know that by sunset I wouldn't be on a ship. I'd be locked in a home office, staring at a legal document that would have effectively erased my existence. They didn't want me to celebrate our anniversary. They wanted me to sign away my life. I remember looking at Arthur across the breakfast table that morning. He was being extra attentive, pouring my coffee just the way I like it, 2 creams, no sugar. He kept checking his watch, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. I thought it was just travel jitters. After all, Arthur wasn't a big fan of flying, and we had a long flight to Barcelona before boarding the ship. "You okay, honey?" I asked, reaching across the table to touch his hand. He flinched. Not a big movement, just a tiny twitch of the skin, but it felt like a cold breeze. "Just want everything to be perfect, Sarah," he said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You deserve the world today." Madison walked in then, her phone glued to her hand as usual. She was our only child, the light of my life, but lately she'd been distant. She was deep in debt from a failed boutique business in Manhattan, and I knew Arthur had been helping her behind my back. I didn't mind the helping, I minded the lying. "The car will be here in an hour, Mom," she said, her voice sounding strangely flat. "Did you finish those last-minute papers for the estate? The ones the lawyer sent over?" I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. I remembered the thick envelope that had arrived yesterday, but Arthur had told me it was just standard travel insurance and emergency protocols, since we'd be out of the country for a month. I told her I hadn't looked at them yet. The vibe in the room shifted instantly. It was subtle, like the air pressure dropping before a thunderstorm. Arthur and Madison exchanged a look that was too fast, too practiced. It was the kind of look co-conspirators share. My stomach did a small flip. I've always been a woman of intuition. You don't spend 30 years as a nurse without learning how to read the silence between people's words. I decided right then that I wasn't signing anything until I read every single line. But I kept my face calm. I just smiled and said, "I'll get to it right after I finish my toast." As I went upstairs to check my luggage, I actually headed straight for Arthur's study. The envelope was sitting on his mahogany desk. My hands were shaking as I pulled out the documents. I expected to see travel insurance forms or maybe a temporary guardianship for the house. Instead, the bold letters at the top of the page hit me like a physical blow. Durable power of attorney and total asset management transfer. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't for the cruise. This was a legal document that, once signed, would give Arthur and Madison full control over my individual inheritance from my father. A multi-million-dollar estate they knew I had kept in a separate trust. I started reading the fine print. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might break. The document didn't just give them power of attorney if I became incapacitated. It stated that by signing, I was voluntarily declaring myself unfit for financial decision-making due to declining mental health. I gasped. I was 58 years old, in perfect health, and still working part-time. They were gaslighting the legal system to take my father's legacy. And then I saw the kicker. A clause about a long-term residential care facility already being scouted. They weren't taking me on a cruise. They were planning to check me in somewhere and use my money to pay for it. I heard footsteps on the stairs. I quickly shoved the papers back into the envelope and sat on the edge of the desk, trying to control my breathing. It was Madison. She stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame with a look of fake concern. "Mom, we really need to get those signed. The car is almost here, and Dad says the lawyer needs them scanned and sent before we lose cell service on the ship." I looked at my daughter, the girl I had rocked to sleep, the woman I had bailed out of every mistake, and I saw a stranger. I saw someone who looked at me not as a mother, but as a bank account. "Madison," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Why is this a total asset transfer? I thought this was just for the cruise." She didn't even blink. "Oh, you know how lawyers are, Mom. They use big words for everything. It's just so Dad can handle the bills while we're in Europe. Don't be paranoid. It's our anniversary. Let's just get it done and go have fun." She walked toward me, pen in hand, holding it out like a peace offering. But her eyes were cold. There was no love there, only desperation. I realized then that Madison's debts must be much worse than she'd admitted. I told her I'd misplaced my glasses and needed a moment to find them. As soon as she left the room to help me look, I grabbed my cell phone and called my brother, David, who is a retired JAG officer. I whispered into the phone, telling him what I'd seen. "Sarah, listen to me," David said, his voice urgent. "Do not sign anything. Get out of that house. If they've drafted a document like that, they've already laid the groundwork. They might try to keep you from leaving if they know you've caught on." My heart plummeted. This was my family. My husband of 35 years. How could this be happening? I tucked the documents under my sweater and walked back into the hallway. I could hear them whispering downstairs. "Is she signing it?" Arthur asked. "She's stalling," Madison replied, her voice sharp with irritation. "If she doesn't sign, the creditors are going to come for the house by the end of the month, Dad. You told me this was a sure thing." I froze. The house? Arthur had mortgaged our family home to pay for Madison's failures? And now they needed my inheritance to cover the tracks? I felt a wave of nausea. The cruise wasn't a celebration. It was a distraction. A way to get me relaxed enough to sign my life away. I knew I couldn't just walk out the front door. They'd stop me. I went into the bathroom and turned on the shower, letting the water run so they'd think I was getting ready. Then I climbed out the window onto the porch roof. It was a drop I hadn't made since I was a teenager, but adrenaline is a hell of a drug. I landed hard in the bushes, scraped my knees, but I didn't care. I ran to the garage, grabbed my spare key from the hidden magnetic box under the workbench, and got into my old SUV. The one Arthur always told me to sell because it was unreliable. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Arthur run out onto the front porch. The look on his face wasn't one of worry for my safety. It was the look of a man who had just seen his retirement plan driving away. He yelled something, but I didn't stop. I drove straight to the local police station and then to my brother's house. Over the next few hours, the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. David helped me call a private investigator he knew. It turned out Arthur had been funneling money into offshore accounts for months, preparing for a new life, once he'd secured my trust fund. The betrayal was a physical pain, a dull ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. I sat in David's living room, staring at the wall. 35 years. Every birthday, every Christmas, every sickness we'd navigated together. Was it all a lie? Or had the greed just slowly rotted him from the inside out? David handed me a cup of tea, but my hands were shaking too much to hold it. "What do I do now?" I whispered. "Now," David said firmly, "we make sure they never touch a penny of your father's money. And we make sure they answer for what they tried to do." I didn't go on the cruise. Instead, I spent that week in a lawyer's office. We discovered that Arthur had forged my signature on several smaller documents already, but he needed the power of attorney for the big move, the liquidation of the trust. Because he hadn't succeeded in getting the final signature, I was able to freeze everything. But the hardest part wasn't the legal battle. It was the phone calls. Madison called me dozens of times, sobbing, telling me I was ruining the family, and that she was going to end up on the street because of me. "No, Madison," I told her during the final call I ever took from her. "You ruined this family when you decided I was worth more to you as a legal ward than as a mother. You and your father made your bed. Now you have to sleep in it." I hung up and changed my number. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. People ask me how I could cut off my only daughter. I tell them that I didn't cut her off. She threw me away first. She just didn't expect me to fight back. The divorce was messy. Arthur tried to claim he was the victim, that I had mental lapses, and he was only trying to protect me. But my medical records and my coworkers at the hospital proved otherwise. I had years of performance reviews showing I was sharp as a tack. In the end, he lost the house. Madison had to declare bankruptcy. I moved to a small cottage 2 states away, where the ocean looks different, clearer somehow. I never did go on that Mediterranean cruise. I don't think I'll ever want to go on a ship again. I'm happy right here on solid ground, where I know exactly who I am and exactly what I own. You see, the thing about power of attorney is that it requires trust. And trust is a fragile thing. It takes 30 years to build and only 30 minutes, and a thick legal envelope to destroy. I learned that the people you would take a bullet for are sometimes the ones holding the gun. But I also learned that I am stronger than they thought. They thought I was an old woman who could be easily manipulated. They forgot that I was the one who built this life, and I'll be the one to decide how it ends. Now I spend my mornings walking on the beach. I don't look for seagulls or shells anymore. I look at the horizon. It reminds me that there's always a way out, even when the doors are being locked behind you. I lost a husband and a daughter, but I found my voice. And in the end, that's a legacy worth more than any trust fund. If you're listening to this and something feels off with your family or your finances, don't ignore it. Don't sign the paper just to keep the peace, because the peace you're keeping might just be the silence of your own life being stolen from you. I often wonder what would have happened if I had just signed those papers and gotten in the car. Would I have ever come back from that cruise? Or would I have fallen overboard? Or perhaps I would have returned, only to be driven straight to that care facility they had picked out, while they spent my father's hard-earned money on a life I was no longer a part of. The thought sends a chill down my spine that even the summer sun can't warm. It's a terrifying reality for many seniors in this country. Financial elder abuse is a silent epidemic, and often, the predators are the ones sitting at your Thanksgiving table. I've spent the last year working with an advocacy group that helps people protect themselves from this exact situation. It's my way of healing. I tell my story to anyone who will listen, not for pity but for prevention. I want people to know the red flags, the sudden urgency for signatures, the isolation from other family members, the secret financial problems that suddenly become your responsibility to fix. My daughter thought I was her safety net, but she forgot that a net only works if it's attached to something strong. She tried to cut the attachments and she fell. Arthur tried to reach out to me last month. He sent a letter, not an apology, but a request for money. He said his new apartment was small and he was struggling to pay his medical bills. I didn't reply. I put the letter in the shredder and watched it turn into confetti. It felt like the final act of a long, painful play. The man I loved died the moment he looked at those legal documents and saw a payday instead of a partner. I've mourned him, but I won't fund him. My life is quiet now, and I like it that way. I have a small circle of friends who know the truth, and a brother who has been my rock. I've updated my will, of course. Everything will go to a charity that helps nurses in need. Madison won't get a cent. Some people say that's harsh. I say it's justice. You cannot try to erase someone and then expect to be written into their future. The power of attorney they wanted was a weapon. I just chose to disarm them. Every time I see a commercial for a cruise, I feel a tiny pang of what could have been. Not the betrayal, but the dream I had. The dream of standing on a deck with the man I loved, celebrating a lifetime together. I mourned that dream. But then I look at my hands, the hands that refused to sign, and I feel a surge of pride. I saved myself. And in this world, sometimes that's the greatest anniversary gift you can ever give yourself. I want to leave you with this. Never let anyone make you feel crazy for asking questions. If they love you, they will answer them. If they want to protect you, they will be transparent. If they get angry or defensive when you want to read the fine print, that's not love, that's a trap. Trust your gut, even when it's telling you something you don't want to believe. Because the truth might be painful, but a lie will cost you everything. The sun is setting now over my little cottage. The sky is a bruised purple and orange, beautiful and a little bit sad. But I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. I have the keys to my own house, the rights to my own name, and the power of my own future. And that is a power that no attorney, no husband, and no daughter can ever take away from me again. I am Sarah, I am Survivor, and I am finally free. As the waves crash against the shore outside my window, I'm reminded of how much strength it takes to stay upright when the tide is trying to pull you under. For a long time, I felt like I was drowning in the disappointment of my own family. But the thing about waves is that they eventually recede. The chaos clears and you're left with a clean slate. My slate is clean now. No debts, no lies, no forged signatures. Just the salt air and the sound of my own breath. I've started gardening lately. There's something therapeutic about putting your hands in the dirt and watching something grow from nothing. It's a slow process, much like rebuilding a life. You have to pull the weeds, the people who drain you, to let the flowers bloom. My garden is small, but it's mine. Every petal, every leaf is a testament to the fact that I'm still here. I didn't disappear into a facility. I didn't become a ghost in my own home. Sometimes I think about the cruise ship somewhere out in the middle of the Atlantic. I imagine the grand ballroom, the crystal chandeliers, and the fancy dinners. I wonder if Arthur and Madison would have actually gone through with it, if they would have stood on that deck and toasted to their victory, while I sat in a locked room back home. The thought doesn't make me angry anymore. It just makes me feel sorry for them. What a hollow life they must lead to value paper over people. I've also started writing a book. It's not a thriller or a romance, it's a guide. A guide for women my age on how to secure their assets, how to vet legal documents, and how to spot the signs of financial coercion. If I can save even one person from the heartbreak I went through, then all of this will have been worth it. My father always told me that his legacy wasn't the money, but the character he built. I finally understand what he meant. The money was just the bait that revealed the character of those around me. Looking back, I see the red flags were there for years. The way Arthur would handle the taxes without showing me. The way Madison would ask for loans that never got repaid. I chose to ignore them because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. I wanted to believe that we were the perfect American family. But fairy tales are for children. Adults need the truth. And the truth is, you can love someone and still need to protect yourself from them. I recently went back to Cape May just for a day. I stood in front of our old house, the one Arthur lost. A young couple lives there now. I saw a tricycle on the lawn and a wreath on the door. It looked happy. It didn't look like a crime scene or a place of betrayal. It reminded me that places don't hold the pain. People do. And I've chosen to let that pain go. I left that town with a smile on my face, knowing that I wasn't leaving anything behind that I still needed. The legal battle ended months ago, but the emotional work continues. Some days are harder than others. Some days I miss the husband I thought I had. But then I remember the man in the study with the pen and the lies, and the sadness turns back into strength. I am not a victim. I am a woman who made a choice. It chose me, and I would make that choice 1,000 times over. To anyone watching this, thank you for listening to my story. It's not an easy one to tell, but it's an important one. We live in a world that often tries to push older people to the sidelines, to make us feel like we're past our prime, or incapable of managing our own affairs. Don't let them. You have worked a lifetime for what you have. You have earned the right to control your own destiny. Whether it's a cruise, a house, or a simple bank account, it belongs to you. As I close this chapter, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. There are no cruises on my horizon, just a simple trip to the local nursery to buy some new rose bushes. And that's more than enough for me. I've learned that the most luxurious thing in the world isn't a suite on a ship. It's the peace of mind that comes from knowing you can sleep soundly, with no one trying to steal the ground from under your feet. Stay vigilant, stay strong, and most importantly, stay true to yourself. The power is in your hands. Make sure you're the only one holding the pen. My name is Sarah, and this was the anniversary cruise I never took, the best trip I never went on, and the moment I finally reclaimed my life.